Welcome to HBTV. I'm Harry Binswanger, the HB in HBTV. I'm a philosopher who advocates Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. Today, we're continuing a discussion on free will, and we're focusing it on a big opponent of free will, Sam Harris. Sam Harris wrote the book Free Will, which is an attack on free will. It's not a defense of it. The book is very well done. I recommend you read it. It's very short. It's about an hour's read, maybe an hour and a half. Very well written, a lot of poignant examples raised. The topic is focused. The arguments are logical. And I want to show what's wrong with them. It's not really that there's something wrong with the arguments per se, but there's another factor he's not taking into account. To review what I said last time, to give us a context, there are three positions on the topic of free will. One is the position of the advocate of free will. Let's call him the free willist. And he says that man has some genuine area of choice such that the future is open. He controls himself and his life through the use of his choice. And according to whether he chooses his life and his character develop one way or another way. Determinism is the view that no, choice is an illusion, and everything that we think of as a choice, everything that goes on inside a man and in his existential outward actions is made necessary by antecedent factors beyond his control. Indeterminism is the position that there are some things that just happen. They aren't deterministic, but they also aren't chosen. So they're just freak chance accidents. For instance, people point to quantum events like the decay of a radioactive nucleus, such as the radium nucleus, which emits a particle once in a while, and there's no predicting when. It just happens. Now, of course, that's bad science. There's no science that observes the absence of causality. It's a conclusion, a philosophical conclusion that it's causeless. But that's not our point here. A wrong philosophical conclusion. The point here is indeterminism can be put aside, because to say sometimes freak things happen in your brain, let's say, that starts you down a certain road that you wouldn't have been if that freak chance event hadn't happened, is not to give you free will. It's not to give you any control over your life. So it's like a broken determinism. It's not free will. Free will is self-control, self-direction. Ayn Rand describes man as a being of, quote, self-made soul. Self-made soul. You choose who you will become. And we're going to get into that topic later. What does she mean by that, and how could it happen? But for the moment, I just want to say indeterminism has really nothing to say of interest in this dispute. So we put that aside. And the real dispute is it the case that what I'm saying now, I had to say, that for me not to be here saying the cat is on the mat would have been as impossible as for the orbits of the planets not to make them move the way they are moving, for the sun not to be where it is now, but to have gone somewhere else where the sun does move in the galaxy, but I was really referring to the rotation of the Earth around the sun and the revolution on its axis. Rotation and revolution. I get those confused, which one is going around and which one is turning on its own axis. Be that as it may, Harris is as strict a determinist as you can get. He says, for instance, a quote, "My mental life is simply given to me by the cosmos." At another point, he says, "How much credit does a person deserve for not being lazy? None at all. Laziness, like diligence, is a neurological condition. Thoughts and intentions simply arise in the mind." This one, which shows you the ethical political application of determinism. The men and women on death row have some combination of bad genes, bad parents, bad environment, and bad ideas. They couldn't help it. You think you wouldn't do what they did if you were in their circumstances, but if you were in their circumstances with their brain, you would have done what they did. You look with horror on it because you have a different kind of brain. So Harris's form of determinism is for the directly determining factor, it's the brain. It's actions of the brain. The brain underlies your consciousness, your mind, your decisions. And he says it's like a computer. It's complicated. Sometimes it takes time to process and come up with an answer, but the computer can only do the output that it does. It has no choice, and neither do you. You may think you have choice, but you don't. He gives this thought experiment. Imagine a perfect neuroimaging device that would allow us to detect and interpret the subtlest changes in brain function. You might spend an hour thinking and acting freely in the lab, only to discover that scientists scanning your brain had been able to produce a complete record of what you would think and do so some moments in advance of each event. For instance, exactly 10 minutes and 10 seconds into the experiment, you decided to pick up a magazine. And the experimenters you decided you would pick up a magazine from a nearby table and begin reading. But the scanner log shows this mental state arising at 10 minutes and 6 seconds. And the experimenters even knew which magazine you would choose. You read for a while and then got bored and stopped. The experimenters knew you would stop a second before you did and could tell you which sentence would be the last you read. So that's pretty obviously brain determinism. And I want to remind you of the contradiction in that position before we get into what the error is in how he's approaching us. We know his conclusion is false because it would destroy all knowledge, including the knowledge that he's claiming about the brain. To be consistent, Sam Harris would have to say, something compelled me to write the following. I am forced to believe in determinism. I can't help it. It's some combination of genes, parents, environment, and ideas. It just happened. I couldn't avoid it. Even if determinism is false, I couldn't avoid saying that it's true. Oh, and even if that's false, I couldn't avoid saying that that was true. Oh, and even if that's false, I couldn't have. So any content that comes out of his mouth and any thought that passes through his mind, according to his theory, is subjective, is just a prejudice foisted upon him by his genes, his parents, his environment, and the social ideas floating around in his subculture. You know, Freud said all reasoning is rationalization, which is the same thing. And you want to say to him, really, Sigmund? What were you rationalizing when you said such a ridiculous thing as that? Marx said, all thinking is the product of economic interests. Really, Carl? And how much did they pay you to say that? Any doctrine of determinism implies that you're dealing with a mind that is not free to judge the truth. There's no such thing as objectivity. It just emits behavior that it's been forced to do by antecedent factors. So we know there's something wrong in the position that my mental life is simply given to me by the cosmos. How come my mental life is given to me by the cosmos on his theory too? And I come to the opposite conclusion, that there is free will, that the cosmos didn't produce this in me. If he's right, the cosmos produced in me the total acceptance or belief in free will, and it produced in him the total rejection of free will. So how are we to adjudicate that? You can't appeal to reason. I knew someone who got this argument and still was a determinist. And he said, yeah, everything we believe is just programming. We're just programmed to believe it. So how do I evaluate the fact that my programming leads me to believe determinism and others' programming believes them, conditions them, makes them believe in free will? I am programmed right, they are programmed wrong. Now he was, really in a bad way mentally, but that's the logical conclusion. That's what you have to say if you believe in determinism. I am programmed to utter the statement that determinism is absolutely true. Sam Harris is a tape recorder. It's like that. Remember that joke about the automated announcement in the plane cockpit? This is an automated message. We will be taking off in 2 minutes. Please fasten your seatbelt and rest assured that nothing can go wrong, go wrong, go wrong, go wrong. That's the position that Sam Harris says he's in. All right, so we know there's something wrong. What's going on? Let's deep dive into this. He said in the quote I gave last time, I'm quoting, a moment or two of serious self-scrutiny, and you might observe that you no more decide the next thought you think than the next thought I write. So I don't decide the next thought that Sam Harris writes down, obviously. But do I decide the next thought that I think? Well, not exactly. Am I free to do that which does not occur to me to do? Of course not. Yeah, but within the things that occur to you to do, how do you decide which one to do? And how do you decide if the array of things that have occurred to you needs to be expanded? He never considers that. That's not on his radar, that doesn't, there's no, a moment or two of serious self-scrutiny would show you that you are indirectly in control of what occurs to you. To see fully how you're in control, we need a certain concept that I haven't introduced yet from Ayn Rand, but it's quite clear that we ask ourselves questions like, have I left out a possibility here? Do I need more knowledge about what my options are? Should I choose between these things, or is there a third or fourth or fifth or sixth possibility that would be better? I mean, people ask themselves these questions, and they should ask themselves that more often. Okay, so the argument is the brain supplies the thoughts, and that means that you are at their mercy. Because what occurs to you, what pops into your mind, is not under your direct control. Everything that goes on in your mind is deterministic. Whatever pops those thoughts in runs you. Okay, that's the theory, and there's a certain plausibility to that. If I say Mary had a little, you all think lamb, unless you were raised in some foreign culture that doesn't have that Mary had a little lamb nursery rhyme. If I say you are now logged into the intern, you hear net. No one would have heard that 50 years ago. No one, that would not have popped into anyone's mind. If I say 6 plus 2, you hear 8. So there is a certain introspective that validity to the thought that we don't control directly what occurs to us. But it's a very limited viewpoint that is not introspectively valid, that is all there is. Okay, so now let's bring Ayn Rand in to see what he fails to consider. Ayn Rand says in Atlas Shrugged, the hero states, that which you call free will is your mind's freedom to think or not. The only will you have, your only freedom, the choice that controls all the choices you make and determines your life and character. So the deeper issue than what thoughts occur to you is, are you being rational? Are you setting the goal of knowing the full truth? Are you asking yourself logical questions? Are you even concerned with logic? You remember on Seinfeld when George Costanza decided his life was failing? Every time he made a decision, it was the wrong decision. So that for a day, he was going to decide what to do and then do the opposite. Now, that's not logical. It might have been better than what he was doing, but it's not logical. Everything I think is wrong, so I'm going to do the opposite, has no basis in logic. Now, that's a pretty extreme example, but there are all kinds of ways that people fail to be logical, fail to be rational, fail to seek understanding in an honest way, or actually work not to understand something. There's such a thing as evasion, which in objectivism is the cardinal sin. Pushing ideas you think are probably true, but frightening out of your mind and pretending that they're false when you know they're not, or at least you sense they're not. You sense that you should be attending to this unpleasant fact or frightening fact or guilt-inducing fact. But instead of facing it and saying, well, what's the truth about this fact? You say, no, it can't be true. It can't be true. Often you make up, I don't mean you, people make up rationalizations. A rationalization is a reason that the person could know is phony, invoked to justify something he couldn't justify in actual reason. So you're dieting and you've got a craving, you make up a rationalization to break your diet. Like, well, it's the weekend. Or I'll go to the gym and work it off. When you know you're not going to do that, you have a track record of not doing that, and you know that it would take hours to burn up that amount of sugar. Now, it doesn't mean you can't properly break your diet, but you shouldn't kid yourself about it. You shouldn't deceive yourself saying, no, I'm not really breaking my diet. This is a justified exception because it's a full moon today. Or I'm under stress. Now, maybe you are under stress, maybe that's a good reason. But when you rationalize, you don't look at whether it's a good reason. It gets what you want, and your emotions are in charge. Okay, so people do not always think rationally. I think we can all sign up for that. But the choice to engage in rational thought using your best considered judgment, being honest with yourself, asking logical questions and sub-questions, testing your conclusions, that choice is the most fundamental. That is what lies behind such superficial things as, well, do you turn left or right? Do you eat the cake or turn it down? Do you think of a rhinoceros or not think of a rhinoceros? The fundamental issue is what Ayn Rand called the primary choice, to think or not to think. And actually, we're going to get beneath that to some extent. So let me read you what I call the quote. This, Ayn Rand came to speak at my college when I was a freshman. And I was kind of vegging out, spacing out during the lecture. And then she said this, and I woke up with a jolt. Thinking is not an automatic function. In any hour and issue of his life, man is free to think or to evade that effort. Thinking requires a state of full, focused awareness. The act of focusing one's consciousness is volitional. And this is the part that really woke me up right here. Man can focus his mind to a full, active, purposefully directed awareness of reality, or he can unfocus it and let himself drift into semi-conscious daze, merely reacting to any chance stimulus of the immediate moment at the mercy of his undirected sensory perceptual mechanism and of any random associational connections it might happen to make. That's from her speech that became an article, that became a chapter in this book, The Virtue of Selfishness. The title of it is The Objectivist Ethics. So Harris's arguments simply do not apply to the choice to think. His arguments are about what you control and what thoughts occur to you. You don't choose your thoughts. Yeah, you don't choose them directly, but you choose whether you're going to try to think, whether you're going to understand, whether you're going to set a purpose. And that determines indirectly what comes up. So we're really familiar with a very close analogy to this level of control issue in regard to the web. You want to know something. How many home runs did Hank Aaron hit back then when he had the record? Does he still have the record? So you could ask yourself, gee, I don't remember. Or you could go on Google and type that in. You don't even have to go on Google. You just type it into the URL address line, and up will come the answer. Now, maybe what comes, well, let me put it differently. Up comes an array of hits for it. Maybe your question is such that the first hit doesn't look relevant. The second hit doesn't look relevant. The third hit doesn't look relevant. This is you being in charge. This is you using your free will, just as you do in your own mind. So you rephrase your search terms. The example I gave is really good search terms, but I was searching the other day for how do you stop getting new windows in Outlook and get tabs instead? And I had to try a few. I don't think you can. I had to try a few searches and none of them came up. So it's not like every search is guaranteed to find a hit. And then when you get the hit, further questions arise. You read what's there, you open the website, and you form a new search, or you pick a link and you go to that link. That's what it's like to query your brain. Your brain is a giant database. It has a storage of all your knowledge. And it is true that the results of a query you address to yourself is not under your control, but the querying is. And not even the words you use in the query, that's not even under your direct control. What's under your direct control is, are you going to pursue this? Do you want to know? Those of us who've taught know the phenomenon of asking a student a question. What's the integral of 2x dx? And some of them will say, I don't know. And that's the end. I don't know. An answer didn't occur to me. Others of them will say, I don't know, but let me see, what is an integral again? I could get out the book and look. I guess I didn't understand that part. And then they follow a trail. That's the choice, not what you will find when you get to page 58 of the calculus textbook, not your immediate subconscious feed into your conscious awareness, which you do not directly control. But if you set a purpose and ask yourself logical questions and face the truth and judge it and go on to ask new questions, you are living a different life than the person who just says, I don't know, or x squared, I don't like that answer. It must be, nobody can know anything. I don't like x. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't like x squared. It's a really nice function. But in life, it comes up all the time. So you see how Harris is saying, well, when you enter the search and hit, enter on your computer, what comes back is not under your control. So you are not a quester after truth. You're not in control. The cosmos runs it. Yeah, but you are in charge of whether you think about how to query the database, or whether you give up, or whether you lie to yourself about what you find. So the fact that you are not directly in control of the thoughts that occur to you, as he points out, sure. I mean, that's an important point. But you are indirectly in control of it because you control the querying and judging process. You are the manager who asks subordinates to do certain tasks, send him certain reports, and you judge how they did and whether more work is needed or we can stop here. And that he has no arguments against, except the very generalized one, well, the brain is determined. But that is entirely based upon a certain theory of the mind-brain relationship, which there's no particular argument for. I don't know what the mind-brain relationship is either, but I know that I control whether I seek the truth or evade it, whether I do the work or don't do the work. And in a minute, I will discuss the other introspective. We have the argument that determinism is self-refuting, which I gave earlier. So I know that I am not the product of the cosmos, that I'm an active seeker of the truth. And nothing that Harris says interferes with that. In a moment, we'll talk about some of the scientific research that he says supports his position. And we'll see that that also fails. But I said to Nikos that I would pause here.
Okay, but my camera thinks differently. So you'll just hear me, but you can't see me apparently. Okay, so let me read a couple of questions and super chats. So actually more comments rather than questions. Thank you, Jeff. Robert says, I want my HBTV. And thank you, Jeff, again. And I think we have the comments of the month by the DDV Show, who says, I was determined to give you this super chat. He means Sam Harris is standing behind me with a baseball bat. And also, let me remind people that today at 10 o'clock UK time, we have Onkar Gate with our friends from the Aporia Institute with their weekly Method in Madness. And today's topic is racism. So we encourage people to check this out at 10 o'clock. Harry, back to you.
Yeah, well, I can certainly recommend Onkar Gate's material and presentation. He's terrific. And the Aporia guys, is that Austin Dolphin and Ibis and Lewis? Or is that who you're talking about?
Yes, it's two of them who appear, but it's these people, yeah.
They're very fascinating also, so I recommend that. Okay, did we get a question? No, we didn't get a question.
No, it was just comments, so continue.
Okay. All right, let me go to the evidence for it. And the best evidence for it is just to think how you behave and you could behave and how other people do. I made up a scenario to illustrate. Oh, actually, I have to introduce that concept I referred to. I didn't get to that. And I said I would do the scientific work first. Okay, so the scientific work. Benjamin Libet. Benjamin Libet is a neuroscientist who I've heard speak, and I've read the work that he did, who has discovered that 300 milliseconds before a person is asked randomly to tap a button or wiggle his finger, something goes on in the brain. So subjects are sat down and told, the finger is wired up, I presume, and they're told at some random interval, make a choice. I'm going to now tap the button. So they sit there for a while and then they tap it at a time determined by them, right? And they can detect what he called a readiness potential less than a second before. 300 milliseconds means ta-ta, like that. There's like a 300 millisecond gap there between ta-ta, because you have to do it 3 and a third times a second to be at 300 milliseconds. So before you've made the choice, Sam Harris says, the scientists already know that you're going to do it. You're going to take an action. So isn't that proof that your feeling of free will is an illusion? But that's not the choice to think. That's the choice to do something for which there's no reason. There's a choice. It's not only not the choice to think, it's the choice to participate in an experiment where you try to do something without thinking, without having a reason, randomly. But even if it were having a reason, even if the experiment was, when you think the time is right for doing X, do X. The fact that you do it right after some neural event occurs has nothing to do with whether you're in focus or not. Oh, there I brought the concept in. The concept that underlies thinking is focus. I actually said it in the quote from Ayn Rand, man can focus his mind to a full awareness of reality or drift. It's like focusing a lens, right? You can activate your mind, put it in gear, focus on some issue, and be purposeful, rational, honest, logical to the best of your ability. Or you can do anything less than that, or even deliberately refuse to face something, evade it. So focus is the kind of like inner psychological basis of thinking. It's an umbrella term to describe the mental state in which you are thinking rationally, honestly, purposefully. We call that being in focus because that's what it feels like. What? That's coming into focus. So Libet was not testing the state of focus or whether the person was thinking. He was testing when the finger flipped. But that's not directly volitional. So it makes perfect sense that there are antecedent things going on in the brain. What he would have to show to be providing evidence against the objectivist theory of free will is 5 minutes before you come into focus and you realize, hey, I've been drifting, like I was at that lecture that Ayn Rand gave. 5 minutes before, you could predict, oh, he's going 5 minutes from now, he's going to snap into focus and say, oh, wow, what's going on? Let me take the reins. And that experiment has not been done. I don't know how it would be done, but if it were, it would not come out with this correlation. You could not predict that. So the scientific evidence, like everything else in Harris's book, is about how actions and thoughts have precursors and have conditions, and you do not choose directly. But the thing that you do choose directly is the trying, the effort, the honesty, the turning on of the circuitry of your mind, getting engaged, getting in gear. And that he has no arguments directed towards, and no science has ever been done about that. So it's all just what the Greek is ignoratio elenchi, attacking the wrong conclusion. The argument is, well, you don't directly choose your actions or your thought. Yeah, but nobody's Well, everybody says, except we, objectivists, we're not saying that. We agree that the thoughts follow from the state of focus, but the state of focus is self-generated. Now let's turn to the introspective evidence and what it means to say you focus your mind or don't. So I made up a inner monologue, which I think is very convincing, if I do say so, about two students' thought processes the night before final exam. And I'm going to read the first student's thoughts and then the second student's thoughts. But I think, should I lower that shade? It's probably annoying. Yeah, I can, if you excuse me for a second, I can lower that. So I'm going to mute and I'm back. Sorry for that interruption, but as the seasons change, the sun gets at different places during the day. So this is something that should strike you as familiar, as the kind of thing that's realistic. I hope it does. Two students the night before their final. Am I going to study tonight or watch TV? I guess I ought to study, but that course, ugh. Professor Winston is so boring. I don't see why I should have to force myself to study something if the teacher can't make it interesting. He wants us to do all the work while all he does is read his lectures from a script. He must have written that lecture decades ago. There are jokes from the 80s in them. I bet he hasn't done any new work in years. Just takes it easy. He's probably watching TV right now. What's on TV? Oh, that great old Bogart film. That's the one I saw last year with Maureen. I remember how she cried at the end of the film. That was really nice. Maureen is nice. I don't know why I didn't pursue a relationship with her. Hey, I could ask her over right now to watch that movie on TV. Repeating our old date, that would come across as real romantic. Oh, but what about the final? Oh, I guess I'm prepared enough, and everyone knows you can bluff your way through philosophy tests. He reaches for the phone. Second student's thoughts. Am I going to study tonight or watch TV? What's at stake? My grade point average. If I don't do well in the final tomorrow, I'm going to get a C in the course, and that's not going to look too good when I apply to graduate school. But is studying tonight really going to make a difference to my grade? Well, how well do I already understand the material this exam will cover? Well, what will it cover? Oh yeah, Professor Winston said it will be mainly on Aristotle's ethics. What are the topics of Aristotle's ethics that we're going to be responsible for? He looks at his notes. Happiness as an end in itself, the golden mean, pride as the crown of the virtues. Now, how well prepared am I on those topics? Well, I wrote my term paper on the golden mean. I know I've got that down pat. No problem with the virtue of pride, that's simple. But happiness, didn't that have some technical stuff in it? What was it? Something about the soul? Yeah, that was confusing. Professor Winston sure wasn't clear about that. But then what is he ever clear on? He expects the class to figure out what he's saying rather than taking the trouble to explain anything. He just reads his old lecture notes and never... Wait, that's beside the point. Let me get back on track. Okay, if I'm hazy on happiness, I'm not going to do too well. Winston's hinted more than once that Aristotle's view of happiness is important. I could reread my notes on happiness and check a secondary source. But then that's going to take time, and that great Bogart film is on TV tonight. I'd hate to miss it. And after all, I want to see that movie. Do I have to miss it? Is there some other way? Wait, it must be out as a video. Yeah, I'll rent the video tomorrow night after the exam as a reward for nailing down Aristotle's view of happiness tonight. He reaches for his study materials. Now, notice that I put some logic into the first student's thoughts, but not a whole lot. And I put some wandering into the second student's thought. He starts going off on Winston is a bad professor. When does he ever explain anything? And then he catches himself. He says, well, wait, that's beside the point. Let me back on track. And that's just what you do. If you're concerned, if you're in focus, it's not, Harris is right, it's not that you control every thought that occurs to you, but it is that you judge the thoughts that occur to you in relation to your purpose. Looks like my background just changed. Well, that's an okay background too. We'll continue with that. The cosmos is angry at me for denying them control over my mind, but I'm not yielding. So the first student is rationalizing, making excuses, thinking only very short range, not guiding his thought process, not in focus. He's going on autopilot. Now, Sam Harris's view, and the view of most people, is that everybody goes on autopilot all the time. But they don't. I don't. I'm sure lots of you don't. No one really goes on autopilot all the time, but they take those as the representative of the mind. Now, again, another computer analogy. If you go on YouTube and you video about early rock and roll and watch a video, if you do nothing, just sit there and watch it, YouTube will find a related set of other videos and put it in the column to the right. You've probably seen that. And if you do nothing, the next one that it thinks its algorithm has selected as most relevant will just start playing. So you could sit there indefinitely letting YouTube feed you video after video, but you don't have to. The point is that the choice not to think is not the choice to have blackness inside your head. It's a choice not to manage what comes up from your subconscious, not to query it, but to go with the flow, to react, to respond, to let it operate on automatic pilot, to let the automatized information and connections that you've made run you. And as you may have gathered, that's a bad thing. But our point is not to draw the ethical conclusion, but our point is that this is not being discussed. It's in a way understandable because this theory of the choice to think, and behind that, the choice to focus, to be prepared to think, was only first enunciated to the world in 1957, which from a historical perspective, going back to ancient Greece, is an eye blink in history. But from another perspective, it's not understandable because lots of people have read the quotes. Millions and millions of people have read the quotes that I read to you, and it didn't reach them. They didn't do anything about it. And if you're a professional intellectual and you do not see that the choice to think is prior to the choice to think about any particular subject, you're disqualified from being an intellectual. It may be you don't realize, oh yeah, of course, behind, deeper than what I'm thinking about is whether I'm thinking. I hadn't thought of that. But once it's been pointed out, if you shrug it off, you're using your free will in a very anti-intellectual way, because that is so obviously and unanswerably true. Okay, if you want to make up arguments to show the choice to focus your mind, to set it to the task of knowing reality, is determined too, okay, be my guest. But to just not pay any attention to it, if you've heard it, is a dereliction of duty. It's evasion. It's blanking out. Ayn Rand calls evasion, not blindness, but the refusal to see. That is the worst thing you can do to yourself, and the most disqualifying thing you can do from an ethical standpoint. Let me stop there, and I think Nikos had to go, but Dylan, are you there to give me more chat questions? Okay, and I have another. The next subject is right queued up. Okay, this is exploring further those two students, and looking at what are, if we formalize it, what are the introspective data that the choice to focus being volitional is a conclusion from? What is the evidence that the choice to focus is not going to fall like the choice to, well, of course it isn't a choice, the flow of information from your subconscious, from your brain, which is not directly under your control, but is indirectly. Maybe that's going to fall too. What evidence do we have introspectively that we have control at that level? The first and crucial bit of evidence is it takes effort. There are things that you do. There are things that you do, and there are things that happen to you, even in your mind. You ever been startled? No, I was startled. I was sad, not I sadded, but I thought, not I was thought. The very language shows that there are things that we, in our minds, that we do, and things that happen to us. There are things where we are active subjects, we're the agent. And there are things where we are the patient, to use a philosophical term. Things happen to us. A gunshot blares out and you feel fear. A beautiful woman walks by, and if you're a man, you feel desire, admiration. That's not something that you did, but if I say to you, what is the thing you had for lunch a week ago today? You have to do some work to recall that, if you even can. Or were there any earlier thinkers who did say that the use of rational thought is the locus of free will? Now, you may not know any history, but you still have to, well, let me see. Have I heard anything? We all know the effort it takes to search for a name. Oh, I know that person's name. I just can't bring it up. They begin with a A or a B, and you can just sit there twisting your mind. Well, that's very negative. Doing work. And there are other things, like Mary Had a Little, where stuff just is triggered and comes in. So that distinction is between the active and the reactive element within you. And that's introspectively obvious. So it's wrong to think that you see free will when you choose the kind of things that Sam Harris is talking about. He said he chose to rekindle an interest in the martial arts, which he had, as a student, a kid, he had studied the martial arts. For 20 years, he did nothing. Then suddenly decided to take it up again. He doesn't know why. He should, but he doesn't. But that choice to take up martial arts again, to learn how to play the piano, to go out on a date, those are not the direct evidence of free will. They feel free because you're not focusing on the factors that led you to do that. But those factors terminate in your choice to use your mind or not to use your mind, to think or not to think, to be rational, in focus, seek the real truth or anything less than that. So that's one. Let me just name the other 2 or 3 things because we're past the time, but we started a little late. Trying. You try to remember that person's name. You try to solve the crossword puzzle. There's no such thing as trying without making an effort to do something in the face of uncertainty. How about uncertainty? How about doubt? Can a determined mind experience doubt? It seems hard because doubt is not knowing which way to go. A computer may hesitate in the sense of the wheels are spinning for a while before it emits an output, but there's no doubt even if the computer were conscious. There wouldn't be any doubt. It's hard to see how a deterministic mind could have indecision or doubt. And then there are the emotions of pride and guilt. Now you could say pride is a mistake or guilt is a mistake, but how do you say an emotion is a mistake? You could say, well, you shouldn't feel proud of X and Y and Z because you didn't really do that. Or you shouldn't feel guilty over A, B, and C because that's just the remnants of religion. They're making you feel guilty for something that's not your fault. But how would you say the whole emotions of pride and guilt shouldn't exist? Not that they're attached to the wrong objects, but the feeling of pride is a mistake. Because pride is a feeling that you did something by choice that was good and right. You don't feel pride about the things that you have absolutely no control over and realize you don't. Like, I'm really proud I didn't sneeze once during this talk. I'm really proud I have a height greater than 5'6". Racial pride. You can't really have racial pride. But the point is, you feel pride about something, you feel guilt about something, but you can feel them, even about the wrong things, because there is such a thing as choice. You feel guilt when you act against what you should have done by your own standards, and you feel pride when you persevere to achieve something that you know you didn't have to do, that wasn't fated, so to speak. So those are some of the introspective signs of free will, and they're not discussed in the Harris book. They're generally not discussed in the literature in philosophy at all. Next time I do HBTV, I'm going to continue with what is the meaning of the choice to focus or not. because it's not a simple thing. It's not complicated, confusing, but it's multidimensional. And it really is rewarding to see all the different aspects of free will. And I will continue with not answering Sam Harrison unless somebody asks about that, but continue to discuss the general topic of free will. Thanks to the Ayn Rand Institute for supporting this program, and thanks to you for watching HBTV. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today. I hope to see you then. Goodbye.